All right, so what we're going to do here is break down a really raw personal account of a 40-day journey. But listen, this isn't your typical self-help story. It's better to think of it as a map for understanding what deep biological change actually feels like from the inside out. You know, this quote just sets the stage perfectly. There was no big plan here, no calendar with a red circle on day 40. It was just an act of endurance. It was a single decision that was made over and over and over again. Just stay with the discomfort until something fundamental changes. So this wasn't really a challenge. It was a discovery. So the first big idea we have to get our heads around is that we need to reframe the entire goal from the very beginning. We're always told that these kinds of journeys are all about discipline, right? About gritting your teeth and just pushing through. But this story, well, it reveals a much deeper truth. It's not about willpower. It's about biology. And this is really the core misunderstanding. The journey wasn't some fight to be won with sheer force of will. No, it was a messy biological process. It was about repairing a nervous system that was totally out of whack, discovering who you are without the usual crutches, and slowly, piece by piece, rebuilding trust in yourself. Okay, so let's look at the starting point. This was never a fight against a single bad habit. It was a head-on confrontation with a really complex, interlocking system, a well-oiled machine, if you will, built for one single purpose: to numb out and escape. So here's how all the pieces of that machine work together. Alcohol, for instance, wasn't just a drink. It was the main regulator for a system that was completely out of balance. Vaping was the constant low-level hum of coping. And if you took those away, well, junk food rushed right in as a filler for that empty space. And all of it, every single piece, fed that pod magnet, that automatic reflex to just escape to the couch, which of course led to this brutal shame cycle that started the whole machine right back up again. So what happens when you start to dismantle that machine? You step into what the source calls the wilderness. But here's the crucial part. This wasn't 40 days of just random suffering. The journey through this wilderness actually followed a clear, predictable 3-stage pattern. And that gives us a map for the chaos. So the pattern unfolds in 3 pretty distinct phases. The first 10 days, that's pure physical chaos. The next 20 days are a really messy period of substitution, where the brain is just scrambling for replacements. And then, in those final 10 days, a new kind of regulation, a new baseline, finally starts to emerge. Just understanding this map can turn what feels like an overwhelming ordeal into a process you can actually navigate. Let's take a closer look at that first phase, chaos. The source calls it the body revolt, and that is a perfect description. Because as soon as the main regulator was gone, the battle wasn't mental, it was a full-blown physical uprising. And this is where it gets really gritty. This is not all in your head. We're talking about fractured sleep, being jolted awake by adrenaline between 3 and 5 in the morning, shaking hands, a constant buzzing inside you, that awful, wired but exhausted feeling. This is literally your nervous system in absolute protest, screaming as it tries to figure out how to function without its familiar tools. Now, once that initial physical storm starts to pass, you hit phase 2, and the nervous system hates a vacuum. With its main regulator gone, it desperately scrambles for anything to fill that void, which leads to what the source bluntly calls substitution hell. The key lesson here is so important. This is not a moral failing, it's your body trying to do its job. Understanding that, well, that's what stops the shame spiral in its tracks. And this quote just reveals the true target of all that craving. It wasn't really about the drink or the vape, it was for permission to stop trying so hard, to stop being present, to stop being constantly on. It was this deep biological craving for a pause button on all the demands of life. So around 30 days in, after navigating the physical revolt and all the mental traps of substitution, something finally starts to shift. The struggle pivots from this raw physical fight to a really profound mental realization. This is the turning point of the entire journey. And this leads us to the one question that changes everything. It wasn't the bottle, it wasn't the vape, it wasn't any of those external things. After all that chaos, what was the real enemy? The real enemy was the lifelong habit of avoiding discomfort. This realization just reframes the whole journey. The fight was never against a substance. The true struggle was with that deep, primal urge to run away from difficult feelings, from boredom, sadness, stress, you name it.
So, with the real enemy identified, the strategy changes completely. The goal is no longer to win this exhausting battle every single day. It becomes so much simpler and way more profound. Learn to outlast the discomfort. Just learn to sit with it, survive it, and stay present long enough for it to pass.
And this leads to the final phase of the journey, the crossing. Now, this isn't some perfect, happy ending. It's the establishment of a completely new baseline for how you operate in the world. It's all about building something new, not just finishing a challenge. And with this new perspective, the whole strategy shifts to sustainable systems, not fragile vows. These aren't impossible promises you make to yourself. They're simple, practical tools that actually emerged from the process itself. Tools that work on your worst days, not just resolutions you make on your best ones. Choosing movement, using silence, creating new rituals, and crucially, giving yourself permission to just leave. This right here might be one of the most important takeaways. Day 40 was never about being cured. It wasn't the finish line. It was the starting line. It was all just preparation, the training ground for a whole new way of operating, equipped with new systems and a real understanding of what the actual fight is.
And the final, powerful thought is this. That whole period of chaos and discomfort and substitution, it's not a punishment to be escaped. It is a necessary, effective process of recalibration. The wilderness isn't an obstacle to survive. The wilderness is the transformation.